Mr. Jones, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us on Republic TV.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. I sure do appreciate it.
Mr. Jones, there has been a lot of criticism that's come in from the United States of America, specifically in the manner in which the Biden administration, some say, has fallen short of what it could have done to stop what we see happening currently. Your response?
Well, my response is this. We're disappointed because of the fact that this invasion is at almost its 2-week mark. We have the privilege and, frankly, the responsibility as one of the world leaders, and people look to us. They look to us for a lot of things. They look to us for hope, but they also look to us for support in matters like this. And we have been a bit too reticent to take the active steps that we need to do, both within the Ukraine borders and then also outside of the Ukraine border, in both direct and indirect support that we could have been given. And that direct and indirect support can go right to Ukraine. It can go to its other allies. And I think there's a lot of different ways that we could have been working behind the scenes to ensure that diplomacy and, frankly, an understanding with everyone involved that the United States is willing to and, frankly, will take its might and make sure that Ukrainian people are protected.
Right, absolutely. There is also a sense, Mr. Todd, that the US's continued appetite to actually get militarily involved in perhaps Ukraine or Europe is very, very less at the moment, given what really happened in Afghanistan. Now, is that something perhaps that has stopped the Biden administration from acting? Because the sanctions that have been placed by the US are not really stopping anything at the moment, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation from around the world. And when you look internally within our country, there is definitely, I would say, not consensus amongst the people in terms of what our role should be. Should our role be active, and should it be sending troops in? Should it be active in terms of providing military support directly to the Ukrainian government? Should our role just be financial? Should our role just be humanitarian aid? This is a struggle that we're having from a diplomatic standpoint. But I think at the end of the day, when we take a look at, I'll say, the pros and the cons and what is at risk here, we are talking about a country that does border our NATO allies, and it definitely puts us into a position where, based on Article 5 of NATO, that we could be put into a position where we would have to take that proactive support. So for me, I think being more deliberate in our approach and making sure that we approach this, I say, potential adversary with as much, I'll say, diplomacy and with as much might as possible, as quickly and swiftly as possible, that's something that we need to be looking at seriously.
Right, absolutely. You brought about the fact that about NATO. Now, NATO's main job was to make sure that Europe was protected. In that sense, the red lines, so to say, have been breached by the Russian president. And in that sense also, perhaps the NATO doesn't seem to be doing what it was formed for.
Yeah, I think you can take a lot of interpretations there. I think you're absolutely right. When we think of why NATO was formed post-World War II, it was absolutely to ensure the defense of, well, basically all Europe. And I think at this point, our inactivity, and as we're seeing different NATO countries and different NATO members are taking, in a sense, their own response as opposed to there being a cohesive response. The opportunity that we have as the United States is we've always been seen as a leader of NATO, and we should be out in front of the decisions that are being made so that there can be solidarity amongst the members, so that how we address the challenge that's going on in Ukraine, both directly and indirectly, I think would have a lot more impact if we were doing it in a very concentrated, deliberate, and frankly more coordinated fashion.
Also, Mr. Todd, now what do you think is it that the US can do at this point in time? Because so far the sanctions really haven't deterred Vladimir Putin, and it is unlikely to do so, given the fact that now China is, saying that we are ready to do business. And Russia, of course, says that we will use your financial institutions to do business. So in that scenario, what is it that the United States of America needs to do now?
Yeah, I think we're challenged right now. If you think about the sanctions, I read a very interesting article this morning regarding us pushing effectively some of the largest populations in the world away from the US dollar. That is not good business. As a businessman myself, and then also responsible for the 8th largest economy in the United States of America and the 26th largest economy in the world. For us, we need the U.S. dollar to remain the currency of exchange within the international community. And the idea that we are pushing countries outside of that does not make long-term sense to me. So for me, if we look at it from, I think, just a straight and narrow, how do we defend Ukraine? How do we put Russia out of Ukraine and make sure that our NATO allies know that we're always going to be there to not just help them, but lead them and be the strength that they may need to be able to defend themselves? I think we need to take much more active role within what we're doing militarily, and then also a more active role in terms of what we're willing to do from a financial standpoint. If we're going to take a step within the financial industry, within the enterprise, then that step needs to be firm, it needs to be affirmative, and it needs to be something that really strikes at the heart of what Russia's doing. I think the last thing that needs to be mentioned, of course, is energy independence. I think EU and the United States is guilty of this. There has been a massive push to diversify our energy stream and our energy production. And there's one thing to diversify, it's another thing to completely forget about fossil-based fuels. And I think that's one of the things that this administration in the United States of America has done. We forgot that fossil-based fuels are still a big part of the portfolio, and we need to continue to depend on them in addition to diversifying, and we forgot about that.
Right. Just one question before I let you go. There was talk yesterday of the fact that the US might still press ahead with stopping imports of oil, to deal with your energy needs from Russia. But that's something that won't go very far unless whole of Europe joins in it, because we've already had Germany yesterday say that, we can't deal with our own energy needs if we were to stop imports. So do you think that also perhaps needs to be more cohesive in terms of Europe and America getting on together?
Without a doubt. I think when you look back, and hopefully it's sooner than later that we're able to look back on this, but maybe at the end of 22 or sometime in 23, and we look back at what did we do poorly in 2015, 2018, 2020, 2021. Well, one of the things we did along with our EU allies was we failed to understand that becoming dependent on a regime like Russia for our energy was, frankly, it was bad business, and frankly, it was bad for our national security.
All right, Mr. Todd, appreciate your speaking to us on Republic. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Have a great morning. Bye-bye.